and don'ts of heading to the communist island.
Vito Echeverria is media consultant for Cuba Ventures, which oversees 432 Cuba-themed sites. He joins us this morning via Skype. Good morning, Vito.
Good morning.
Let's talk about the biggest don't you're going to pass on, and it involves driving. You're saying don't drive yourself when you go to Cuba. Why?
Yeah, that's correct. There's a controversial situation that happened some years back when a Canadian youngster by the name of Cody LeCompte, he got into a minor fender bender out there, and he was prevented from leaving the country because in the Cuban court system, when you get into a car accident, you're basically prevented from leaving the country until the situation is resolved in the local courts. So, I mean, it's not that you have to you worry about having to go to jail or anything like that, but you're simply prevented from leaving the country, which to say at least it's a huge inconvenience for travelers. I mean, in LeCompte's situation, he was stuck there for a good 4 months before the Canadian authorities were able to get him out of there.
That's a longer trip than people have planned, I'm sure. So what's your best advice?
It's a huge hotel bill.
Yeah, if someone's saying, hey, I'm thinking about it, maybe what's my best planning advice, before going?
Well, yeah, basically, the other major issue is the fact that most American credit cards are no good in Cuba. There's still certain legalities that are being worked out between the American and Cuban banking systems. So for that reason, we advise travelers to bring as much cash as they need before going out there, because now I can go to an ATM in Cuba and just pull out money. That's still a big no right now for the time being until the issue is resolved. Another issue is the fact that Cuba, unlike other destinations, there isn't a huge consumer culture there. So because of that, there are very few retail stores, and there are a lot of scarcities of a lot of basic items. So we advise people before traveling to pack up whatever drugstore items that they need, everything from over-the-counter drugs and Tylenol and Bear, that sort of thing, to to shampoos, to deodorants, that sort of thing, before going out there. So we advise travelers to do that. Another issue in terms of luggage actually is there is an overage fee, I should say. If you carry over 44 pounds of luggage, you're billed, you're charged $2 per pound, over that weight.
And how are visitors being received? I mean, all of a sudden, Cuba's has this flood of tourists. How do you believe that visitors are being received down there?
Well, yeah, first of all, Cuba's been a tourist economy for the past 20 years. I mean, even though we still have a trade embargo in effect against the country, the rest of the world still engages with Cuba. So as a result, Cuba now has a very huge tourism industry of over 3 million visitors, mostly from Western Europe and Canada. Canada, I think, is like 25% of the tourists that are going out there. That also explains the situation with my agency, Travelucion. We were just bought out by a Canadian investment company called Cuba Ventures Corporation, in part because of the anticipated uptick in American travelers to Cuba.
Okay, well, Vito, I can't let you go without talking cigars. How many? Yes. How much? Give me the lowdown on what we can bring back.
Well, first of all, yeah, under the changes of Obama, American travelers allowed up to $400 in merchandise. That includes $100 US worth of cigars and rum. Now, the whole thing is, when you come back to Cuba, you can haggle with U.S. Customs in terms of what you can actually bring back, because that $100 can range from a few smokes to even 2 boxes, depending on who you're talking to at U.S. Customs. So, I mean, there is room for haggling in terms of what you can bring back.
It does seem that you have to be a little bit willing to be flexible, a little adventurous, and you kind of have to keep up on the changing situation of travel if you're going to Cuba. Enjoy the adventure, it seems.
And is it more of an adventure once you get outside of Havana? I mean, is it if you want to travel beyond just the big city?
Well, yeah, the whole thing is, I mean, most of the European Canadian tourists have had extensive experience with Cuba, so when they go out there, they go to places like Cayo Coco and Varadero, because those are main beachfront destinations. In fact, Varadero is kind of like Cuba's answer to Cancun, if you will. It's just that us Americans, when we think of Cuba, we only think of Havana. We don't know anything else. So I think for the time being, what's going to happen is most Americans are going to fly to Havana to get to know the place, and then, eventually, venture further out to the other parts of the island. Keep in mind that Cuba is the largest island in the Caribbean, so in time, it's going to be a very popular eco-tourist destination, because there's a lot of things to see and do in that area. And so, I mean, there are a lot of possibilities there. Also, Cuba is becoming a so-called bucket list destination due to the fact that You have a number of film companies out there. Vin Diesel just did a film out there recently, the new Fast and 8 film. You also had Michael Bay, the new Transformers film. He filmed portions of it out there as well. So there's a certain buzz, if you will, about Cuba that's never been there before.
Okay, well, Vito Echevarria, thank you for joining us this morning. I have to say, based on his information, haggling and U.S. Customs are not two terms that I usually put in the same sentence. It's a
little Cuba 101, and just, you can bring back a few cigars and maybe not the 2 boxes.
All right, let's talk